Given y equals 10 to the x plus 10 to the negative x all over 2, I want to solve for x. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply both sides by 2. And I'm also going to multiply by 10 to the x, so that I have 2y times 10 to the x equals 10 to the x squared plus 1. I'm going to bring the 2y 10 to the x to the other side. Set it equal to 0. And now this is a quadratic in disguise, because if we let u be 10 to the x, we end up having u squared minus 2yu plus 1 equals 0. So the quadratic formula says opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So u is 10 to the x, so we could replace that. We can factor out a 4, and then it comes outside here, the square root as a 2, and then we can cancel out the 2's. So we really have 10 to the x is equal to y plus or minus the square root of y squared minus 1. And finally we can take the log of both sides. So we have x is equal to log of y plus or minus square root of y squared minus 1. And that's the final answer. Next problem is going to be very similar to this. Now the only difference is going to be the minus instead of the plus. So we're still going to multiply both sides by 2. And then we're going to multiply both sides by 10 to the x. So I have 2y times 10 to the x is equal to 10 to the x squared minus 1. So I can bring the 2y times 10 to the x over. And then I could just use the quadratic formula, which we know is just 10 to the x equals 2y plus or minus the square root of 4y squared plus 4 over 2. These 4's are going to come out of the square root as 2's, which are going to cancel with the other 2's. So I have 10 to the x equals y plus or minus the square root of y squared plus 1. We're going to take the log of both sides. So that's x equals log of y plus or minus the square root of y squared plus 1. Here you have to be careful, because if y is less than negative square root of y squared plus 1, then we'll be having log of a negative number. And that's not possible. You can't have that. So log is defined for x being positive. So the domain is x being positive. So if we put a negative number, well, it's not part of the graph. There's nothing there. So we have to be careful. We don't want to include that case. So we're going to eliminate the case where it's minus. So really, x is just going to be log of y plus the square root of y squared plus 1.